Yep. Thank you. Anyone is welcome to record this meeting, provided they do not disturb the conduct of the meeting. More information is available in the agenda. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed and made available to view in live and archive via the Council's website. If you are seated in the public gallery, it is possible that the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it is recommended you make a member of staff aware and they will direct you where to sit. The Westgate Garden gates are locked, so members of the public should leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass door. Should the fire alarm sound, please leave through the nearest safe exit. The assembly point will be outside Café des Amis. Thank you. Andrea, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Lord Mayor, we have apologies from Councillor Claire Turnbull and Councillor Mel Dawkins.
Thank you very much. Item 2, can I invite Councillors Baldock, Councillor Sol, Councillor Carnac and Councillor Andrew Harvey to make a statement, any declarations of interest by the members of the respective groups. So, Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Any declarations of interest made by members of the Labour Group are declared again by those present at this meeting.
Councillor Sol.
Same for the Lib Dem Group.
Councillor Carnac.
Same for the Conservative Group.
And Councillor Harvey.
Same for the Green Group, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. Have we got any other councillors who want to make a declaration of interest? Hello, yep. Councillor Duke.
I've been advised by the monitoring officer that I need to say that I wish to make a declaration that I will be leaving the room for the debate and vote on item 1. There's a discrepancy over my account, 7, not 1. There is a discrepancy over my account, which I'm currently rectifying. It is actually rectified, it's just not updated on the system. If anyone wants any gossip, please ask me afterwards.
Thank you, Councillor Duke. Now we're to number 4, announcements. Oh, yeah, petitions or questions from the public. There are no petitions or questions for this meeting. Thank you. And now we come to announcements. Can I invite Councillors Baldock and Councillor Carnac, if they wanted to say a few words on the resignations of Councillor Howes and Councillor Carr Ellis. I would like to say something first. I just wanted to say that they both be sorely missed. And talking to one of my drivers, Mark, he said that Councillor Carr Ellis always did a really, really good speech with passion and sometimes inappropriate words, but it was all meant in good stead. So we wish her well, whatever she is doing now, and personal and professional reasons. And Councillor Howes, we've had our disagreements over the course of 13 years, I think, that he's been here. And but he's always been a professional when working groups, housing, and turned up to all the working groups. So I thank him for that. And now, Councillor Baldock, would you like to say anything? And Councillor Carnac.
I'll let Councillor Carnac go first, if I may, Lord Mayor, to speak on Councillor Howes, and then I'll follow up with
OK, Councillor Carnac.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I think we're all very sad to lose Councillor Howes. Joe carried on last year valiantly despite his illness. He was first elected in 2011 and was serving his 4th term here as a councillor. And I think he epitomised what a good councillor should be. He wore his politics lightly and he always put community first, particularly looking after the most vulnerable, including homeless, immigrants, refugees and children. But he did have a rapier wit and he would use that to good effect when needed in this chamber. I think that's maybe what Lord Mayor was referring to. Yeah. He also was very good at seeing the wood for the trees and would go straight in a debate right to the core of the subject. He carried on last year and he really wanted to help put to bed the Older Persons Working Group, which I think at long last is coming to an end with some really good decisions, and he very much wanted to be a part of that because he'd led on that as cabinet member. And he also had a couple of tricky planning cases in his ward, which he wanted to be involved with to the end. As a councillor, he chaired the community committee and he was cabinet member for housing from when cabinet system came back in, which I think was 2022 until 2023. And he oversaw very much the return of housing to Canterbury City Council from East Kent Housing and all the turbulence and difficult period through that. And I think one of the really big strengths of Joe as a councillor was that he worked with officers. He always really respected officers and the hard decisions they had to make. And he really supported officers through that very difficult period. He was also very collegiate with other councillors, and I'm sure many of you know that Joe was originally a geography teacher, and it always amused him that he ended up serving in this council with councillors that he taught at Simon Langton Boys, and there are a couple of them in the room here tonight. So it's a shame he's missed them. Joe's a film buff. He's a cricket and rugby fanatic and sport fanatic, and he's travelled in recent years to all the World Cups around the world. Strangely, bad weather always seemed to go with him. I'm not sure whether that was something to do with the geography or not. But his legacy will particularly be in terms of housing homelessness and looking after the most vulnerable, and in recent years, particularly with Afghan and Ukrainian refugees, and doing a lot of work with council officers to support them, and also with fellow councillors, Councillor Nolan. And I think making us as a council more community focused. We will all miss him. I will particularly miss him. Our group, Conservative group, will miss him, and I'm sure all members here will miss him. But wish Joe well with his health, and I'm sure we'll see him about as sporting events nationally and locally. So thank you, Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Councillor Carnac. Before I call in Councillor Baldock, I will call in Councillor Michael Dixie to say a few words on Lady Mayoress Monica Eden Green, who passed away.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would just like to say a few words about Monica Eden Green. She was a former... Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. She was a former Lady Mayoress of Canterbury who sadly died very recently. Monica was a passionate person with boundless energy and always a ready smile. She wore her convictions on her sleeve and was very active in many good causes. She was a founding member of the Child Poverty Action Group. And when her husband Nick was Lord Mayor in 2003-04, she raised a record sum for her two charities, which were the Pilgrim's Hospice and the Canterbury branch of the Samaritans. She raised the equivalent of £94,000 in today's money. That's a big amount, isn't it? She also organised the first charity bicycle ride from Canterbury to our twin city of Reims, again raising money for charity. Her career was in education, and she was director of South Kent College, where she lectured in sociology and social policy. Monica will be sadly missed by her many friends, and our thoughts and best wishes are with her husband, Nick.
Thank you very much. And can I now ask Councillor Alan Baldock to make a statement on Liz, and then we will go into the statement on devolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, remember Monica very well, and it was a great person to have around. And also Joe has been around all the while I've been a councillor, pretty much very similar lengths of time, and always respected Joe and worked well with him over lots of things, and we disagreed a lot of times, and we got on a lot of times, and that was really, really good to have. So let's talk about somebody of a completely different character and a completely different nature. And I think to some extent doing it this way around is the right way, because we need to understand diversity of being a councillor and how important it is to have voices from everywhere. So all at Team Labour will miss Elizabeth, and I think most of us here will miss her. Just an amazing fellow councillor. It's hard to believe that Elizabeth was a councillor first elected in 2023. So, but it was without doubt, as she's left Canterbury, a legacy to be proud of in deed and word. There was no doubt that was going to happen, because she wrote the first paragraph of her bio, which is on our Labour Council's website. And it says, Elizabeth is a Geordie journalist who fell in love with Canterbury on a day trip and made the city her home, living around the UK as well as Spain and Canada. She makes her living writing, but believes in deeds, not words, when it comes to making change. And I think probably sums her up pretty well, doesn't it? So, we love those contributions to debate, especially the references to her mum and her roots, you know, and her poverty and the upbringing that she had. It got us all back to that point in the world where we really ought to be, the real point that we live around. Not forgetting, of course, those explosive moments in reply when she'd sat on her hands much too long and you could almost see the kettle boiling and you knew it was going to be really good when you come in there. And it was usually, and it pointed us sometimes right back to where we should be. She was also a good St Stephen's councillor, and she's not afraid to be there and thereabouts, enjoying the interactions with residents, and proud to be so. And I know Mel will miss her greatly as a fellow St Stephen's councillor. But a bit about Elizabeth as a person as well. So Elizabeth was a phenomenal campaigner. Her unmovable belief in fairness and equality runs alongside her keen interest in women's issues. That passion drove the success of her Paucity Know Your Menopause campaign, a campaign that changed so many lives, actually across Europe and the world as well as this country. And she was also proud to be a Changemaker of the Year, elected by The Big Issue for her campaigning to support vulnerable people. That's just the sort of person she was, but lots of us didn't know about that for such a long time. As a councillor, she was had determination to, during the local plan working group sessions, to build on the draft local plan, or build into that draft local plan, the feminine town planning principles, something that makes our streets safe for all by design. That's a legacy that's now woven into that local plan in many parts and strands, and we're thinking about those issues now that we weren't before. And I think that is something, that a legacy that Elizabeth leaves us. I'm fairly certain that you'll be watching Elizabeth. I don't know whether the cameras, I can't determine that she probably will be tonight. We wish you every success in your new home. Thankfully, and I'm certain it will not be for long before a political magnet, the one that was magnified here big time, grabs you once more and you're back in politics. MSP, MP, local council, I don't know where you're going to be, but you're going to be there soon. So good luck to you, and good luck from all of us to you. Thank you.
And then Councillor Baldock will make a short statement on the devolution and local government reorganisation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Back to serious matters. I just worked steadily through a statement that I prepared, and hopefully it will be helpful. And then we can take this on to the next steps over the months and years to come. So the ambition of our new Labour government to face up to reorganisation of local democracy has been clearly set out in the English Devolution White Paper published in December. The last local government reorganisation on anything like this scale was in 1974, 50 years ago. Harry, even I was young then, okay? So, but faced with inevitable change, it is worth reflecting that it has not been, this is not perhaps surprising change that's needed. The current system of a two-tier local governance is broken and probably past repair. It follows 14 years of the deliberate, politically driven ideology that undermined local government. Proudly, they bullied through by Conservative administration and their obedient Conservative councils up and down the country. We're left with that legacy that has created the change needed today. They had evolved local governance of local authorities into something no better than a parent-child relationship, where we were supposed to be grateful for the opportunity to beg for the crumbs off the table. That is not a healthy or robust base from which to deliver the change needed so that we can serve our residents well, with respect and a sense of security and welfare year on year. This Labour government has committed to resetting that relationship to one of partnership. It is what we need and deserves this through this transition period. Late last year, KCC and Medway, first-tier authorities, signalled a willingness to engage with government and the devolution process. At that point, all district and borough councils were approached and their willingness to be engaged in such an arrangement was confirmed. It was clear that should that mayoral authority be created for Kent, then inevitably unitary authorities would be needed to replace the district and borough councils. But at that point, no firm commitment was made. KCC and Medway councils will have a vote to express an interest in joining the government's fast-track devolution pathway to create a mayoral strategic authority. The expectation is they will do so. That pathway will lead over several years and through many stages to the creation of, firstly, a strategic mayoral authority for all of Kent, including the current Medway Unitary Authority, and then several unitary authorities. There is likely to be 3 or possibly 4 unitary authorities to act as the local delivery vehicle for all local government services. Those are all the services covered currently by KCC and Canterbury City Council. We will likely be part of an East Kent unitary with other adjacent councils, probably Thanet, Dover, Folkestone and Hythe and Ashford. Such a grouping would cover around 660,000 and is in the region of the optimal size for a unitary authority. Arrangements to create such an authority are some way off and would be but certainly be no earlier than 2027 and more likely 2028. Elections for councillors will be part of that new unitary authority would need to be held. There will be no doubt of an opportunity to reconsider town councils and parish councils and to create ones where none exist at this time, so as to keep local democratic links that may be diluted by unitary authority arrangement and their governance intact. That ethos is embedded in the white paper and must be considered holistically and will be by this district council at this moment in time. In summary, and at this very early stage of the process, it is reasonable to say that the political leadership of this council are excited by the opportunities this reorganisation offers. One that will begin a process of rebuilding public service and delivering them in a way that we can still be proud to call service. Public service is what we come for. As leader, I'm not afraid to admit that the change is daunting, for our staff especially, and those at all levels of the organisation. They have invested their career in local government. They should be very proud. But I'm sure that far from being the end, it will be the beginning of new and exciting times. As the change evolves, we want you as staff to be well skilled and confident to move to those new challenges that will be on the horizon. Likewise for councillors, it is a time of uncertainty, but also future opportunities that you will face the re-elections in 2027 or maybe 2028. You could choose to stand as a unitary authority seat or a parish or town council. Indeed, a shadow unitary authority will be elected probably in 27 or 28 to manage 2026 rather or 27 to manage the transition. Will that be an opportunity for you? That will be up for you to make your mind up on what direction you're going. Finally, the rebuilding of our broken local government is something long past its time. It is going to happen. That is, as we have said, both a huge challenge and a welcome opportunity. The time for us to create a local authority wrapped very much in the service of its residents. To do that, we will need our very best team possible, officers and councillors alike. I've been here long enough to know that we have the guts and the commitment to punch above our weight and to create a better future along with our neighbouring councils that we have served elects to for many, many years. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baldock. Then can I invite Peter, the Joint Chief Executive, to give an update on the KCC devolution news. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, following the leader's statement there, I thought it'd be helpful for councillors to get an update for those that aren't aware of the discussions taking place at Kent County Council today. Following, looks like about 4 hours at Council and about an hour and a half at Cabinet earlier today, Kent County Council has agreed to submit a request along with Medway Council to join the devolution priority programme. Along with that, I acknowledge that the Minister, there's a request to look to postpone the May elections, the May county elections in 2025. And Cabinet and Council both note the acceptance onto the devolution priority programme will commit Kent and Medway to mayoral strategic authority elections in May 2026. And that will lead likely to local government reorganisation in either 2027 or 2028. The letter for submission onto the devolution party programme is being sent in tomorrow by both Kent and Medway, and KCC understands that government will notify the leaders of Kent and Medway by the end of January as to whether or not they've been selected to join the devolution priority programme. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baldock. And Joint Chief, I can't keep saying Joint Peter. Chief. Peter, yes. Thank you, Peter. Now go on to item 5. And can I invite the leader, Councillor Alan Baldock, to propose the recommendation below that the Catapult programme for the current year is amended as shown in Appendix 2. And then I'll ask Councillor Saul to second. Thank you very much.
Lord Mayor. So we will, I'll propose formally now that item 5 on our agenda, point D, that the capital programme for the current year is amended as shown in Appendix 2, and obviously ask Mike to second that and make comments if he wishes to. Thank you very much.
Seconded, Lord Mayor, and if I may make a few comments now. The capital programme includes continuing the Levelling Up Fund programme of works totalling £20 million across the 3 years, with match funding from the council of 10%, which will significantly improve the district. Other major projects are due to be completed in 24-25, including the office move to Whitefriars, the Kingsmead Leisure Centre and IT infrastructure. In 25-26, additional funding has been applied for key maintenance of up to 1.5 million from the Environment Agency, and budgets continue to be allocated for car parking maintenance and building maintenance across the council portfolio. Now, in light also of what the leader has just told us all about devolution and local government reorganisation, I would also just like to highlight the fact that over the next few months and years, we do need to look carefully at our finances, our capital programme, reassess what we plan to do, what may need to be done faster, what may need to be deferred, and look at everything in detail. So I just wanted to assure you that although we are agreeing now the capital programme as set out, we will be looking at that closely over future months.
Thank you, Councillor Sol. Have we got anybody else that wishes to debate or speak? Nope. So I'll just ask Councillor Baldock then to sum up as the proposer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. My colleague, Councillor Sol, has obviously set out what this is all about. We've had a chance to read the agenda there. And I just very much reiterate that at the Cabinet now, we're at the position where we are working through any amendments that we need to make to our spending over the next few years to make sure that we have the smoothest transition possible and deliver the most for our residents and if you like, build in as much as we can into our programme for the future. So with that in mind, I would just ask you to support that as set out, and a vote for, of course, is to support that going forward. Thank you.
Can I ask Andrea to take a recorded vote? Can we all vote? Thank you.
So that vote is carried, Lord Mayor, with 28 votes and in favour and 7 abstaining.
Thank you, Andrea. And now we go on to the second part, 5B, and I'll ask Councillor Alan Baldock to propose that the council delegates authority to Cabinet to agree the annual council housing rent increase in future years in accordance with the government's policy at the time when it considers the housing revenue and capital budget following public consultation. So thank you very much. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I won't reread that out. That was hopefully that was clear enough. So again, I would ask my colleague, Councillor Sol, to make a few comments and explain why this is important to us. And therefore, I formally propose that, as set out there, so that the council delegates authority to Cabinet to agree the annual council housing increase in future years in accordance with the government's policy at the time when it considers the housing revenue and capital budget following public consultation. So thank you for that, and I formally propose that.
Seconded, Lord Mayor, and I'll give a bit of an explanation about this. What looks like a power grab from Cabinet on this decision. For those who may not have read the Cabinet papers at the time, at the moment, Council must give tenants at least 28 days' notice of its intention to vary rents and service charges. For this to happen efficiently, and a considerable amount of organisation needs to take place behind the scenes, updating the housing IT system, prepare letters sent to tenants, and to ensure the proposed rents for the new financial year are loaded into the housing benefit system to enable the housing benefit to be calculated seamlessly. Under current government arrangements, Council approves the proposed rent increases late in February. By that time, a considerable amount of work has already taken place on the assumption that Council will agree. This is an extremely tight timetable, though, and allows no margin for error. And any delay would mean that Council might lose thousands of pounds of projected income. Now, that uncertainty could be ended if the decision was made earlier. Therefore, it's recommended to Council tonight that we delegate authority to Cabinet to approve the annual rent increase in line with government policy in future, and that will give us an additional 2 weeks buffer period for officers to update the records and significantly reduce the risk of any loss of income.
Thank you, Councillor Sol. Did you want to sum up, Councillor Baldock?
If there's no other comments, then I think that's probably clear enough to the reason why we seek your support for that, please.
Anybody got comments? No, we go to the recorded vote, Andrea.
So that vote was carried unanimously, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Andrea. Now we go to item 6, recommendations from other committees. Can I invite Councillor Adam Baldock as Chair of the Governance Committee and to propose the recommendation below, and then I can ask Councillor Steph Jupe as Vice Chair to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, as Chair of the Governance Committee, I thank the Governance Committee for helping us through these amendments. And it's not only the Lord Mayor that gets confused about the Chief Exec's roles and the Joint Chief Exec's roles and stuff. So this was all about making our Constitution match as best it possibly can in the first hit. And I really appreciate Matthew for doing that as well. It is very much, without being the least bit patronising, a major piece of wording, rewording and tidying up and what have you. So we didn't really change anything too much at all in there. It's just mainly about the wording and what have you. So you all had a chance to have a read of that through that, sort of spend loads of your time. I'm going to propose the 3 things that we need to do there. I hope Steph will then to second it, and then we can just agree that, so that we can now move forward with Chief Exec, Joint Chief Exec, to walk through in our governance procedure. Okay, so I formally propose then that the amendments set out in the report are to reflect the changes to the senior management structure are approved. That the arrangements for the oversight of council companies are adopted and set out in Part 6 of the Constitution. And that actually reflected the other companies that are coming on board. That the title Service Director is replaced by Director throughout. Okay, so those are the key bits of wording. That's formally proposed. Steph, can you formally second that for me, please?
Happy to second that with no further comment.
Thank you, Councillor
Lord
Jupe.
Mayor.
Any debate or anybody want to contribute? No? So we'll go to the vote, and we'll have a recorded vote. Thank you, Andrea.
And that vote is carried unanimously, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Andrea. Then we go on to Councillor, item 7, calculation of the council tax base and council tax reduction scheme. She's going outside. It's cold out there.
Lord Mayor, do you want to start that?
Can I invite Councillor Anne Baldock to propose and Mike Salter second? Resolves recommendations A to G as set out on pages 9 and 10 of the agenda.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Much the same as the first couple of items in this little package of this meeting. I can formally propose the seek that you resolve to the recommendations A to G as set out on pages 9 and 10 of the agenda. That will allow us to carry out our process for council tax and what have you. So although I formally propose that, I would ask my colleague, Councillor Sol, to add any comments that he wishes to, and then obviously we will open to debate.
Seconded, Lord Mayor. This is where we have to annually agree our council tax base. This is a technical report on a calculation, and the law requires that it comes to council for sign-off. As you can see in the report, we also will be confirming the additional premium on empty properties, which are unchanged from the previous year, and the paper reconfirms the early decision to implement 100% council tax premium on second homes. So there's nothing new here that hasn't been discussed before, but we must now formally resolve it.
Thank you, Councillor Sol. Any debate?
I've got nothing to add if there's...
Any debate? No. So nothing to add, you said, Councillor Baldock?
Nothing to add, Lord Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. So we go to a recorded vote. Andrea?
Councillor Watkins, have you voted? So that vote is carried unanimously, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Does Steph want to come back in? Councillor Duke? Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. Now we go to item 8, and there are 7 questions, so we've got to be a bit strict with ourselves because we only have an overall time limit of 30 minutes for all councillors' questions. Each questioner will have 1 minute to put their question, and 3 minutes is allowed for the response. Each questioner will also be allowed to ask 1 supplementary question, which the respondent to the original question may answer, and no other contribution is allowed. So we've got to be strict and stick to the question, and we'll get through it. Thank you. And the first question is Councillor Ian Stockley.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The government increase in employer national contributions in the budget will add extra costs to the council. How much extra will we have to find to cover the increased national insurance costs for our contracted services, including Canon Co, Active Life and Partnership One, as well as the impact on vital local service providers that our communities rely upon, such as Porchlight, Catching Lives and local charities such as Strode Park? Thank you.
Can I invite Councillor Sol to respond as Cabinet Member for Finance?
Thank you, Councillor Stockley. I understand your concerns around this, and of course, all of the council suppliers, other than the smallest employers, will also face additional costs that may in due course result in additional charges to the council. The council's budget includes an estimate for increases to cover all aspects of additional costs associated with salaries and inflation. The government have allocated additional funding to local authorities for national insurance contributions of £515 million to cover the increase in employers' national insurance. But this is yet to be allocated out to individual councils, so we don't know exactly how much we will receive. The estimate for Canterbury is currently being calculated, and any additional costs that are not covered by the government's funding would need to be covered by the inflationary increase the council was already budgeted for. However, the 25-26 budget does not assume any additional budget to cover the specific national insurance increase. With regards to Canenco, this increase has been included in the inflationary pressures submitted by Canenco to the council for the 25-26 draft budget. Active Life no longer receive direct funding from the council for core costs as part of the Leisure Centre redevelopment programme. Partnership One have accounted for the additional costs within their new budget for 25-26. Any charities that receive funding directly from the council apply for grant rather than receive core funding, and so it would be for the individual charities to consider their costs in any future grant applications.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Stockley?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to ask if there are any plans to possibly help such charities that will have a stark choice whether to provide the services that we currently rely on or not to. You know, is in that situation, is there any contingency that this council has? Thank you.
Sorry. There's no additional contingency set out in the current budget, but as I said in there, any charity that wishes to apply for grant funding, if it needs to, can do so.
Thank you very much. And can I invite Councillor Carnac to put her first question?
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. There's growing concern across the country that developers continue to obtain planning permissions for house building on good agricultural land and then simply land bank these developments to benefit from future rises in land values. Estimates by the LGA have put this figure at somewhere either side of 1 million permissions nationally that are yet to be built. How many unbuilt outline approvals for new homes in the Canterbury district are there? Thank you.
Can I ask Councillor Dixie to respond?
Thank you, Rachel, for your question. I think we're all very concerned with land banking. And as you acknowledge, it's not just a Canterbury issue, it's a national issue. In reply to your question, planning permission is now being granted for the development of 10 of the 12 strategic sites identified in the 2017 local plan, the current local plan. Development is either complete or underway on 7 of these sites, 7 of the 10. The 3 unbuilt outline approvals are South Canterbury, which is 4,000 homes, and currently is being extensive preparatory work is underway in advance of the development commencing. The second one is Starry, which is 650 homes. Application for reserve matters are due within the next 12 months. And the third one is Chislet Colliery, 450 homes. And a recent planning permission has been made to amend the details of this scheme. We've also received planning applications for 4 sites that are included in the draft local plan, or in other words, our next local plan. So that's the current situation.
Thank you, Councillor Dixie. Did you have a supplementary, Councillor Carney?
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Dixie. Yeah, I agree. So that probably tallies with what many districts are looking at similar numbers. And I guess my follow-up is probably a bit rhetorical, but how are we going to get those built? I think that's something that is in the interests of each one of us, but it's an awful lot of houses that we really need to get built.
Is that a question or a statement? I'm not sure.
Question, how are we going to get them built?
Yeah, I agree with you. We need to get them built. I'm not sure what we can do to get them built, to be honest. But if you can suggest ways in which we can pressurise the developers, we're all ears. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixie. Can I invite Councillor Andrew Harvey to put their first question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. You'll recall that last time we were all here, I asked a question about why we use single-use disposable cups in the drinks dispenser there, and I'm pleased to see far fewer councillors using them tonight. But part of the answer to that question was that there was a Canterbury City Council policy of no single-use plastics on council properties. So bearing that in mind, I just wondered why every single drink at South Quay Shed council-run bar is served in a throwaway cup.
Can I invite Councillor Chris Cornell, Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Inclusion, and
now an
Coastal
expert in
Towns
plastic cups.
Champion.
Thank you for your question, Andrew, and an opportunity to update members on a conversation I had in December with Plastic Free Whitstable. You'll be glad to know that every single drink in the South Quay Shed is not in a single-use cup. But like many businesses that have gone plastic free, we've gone through a process of trying to look at different alternatives. Ideally, we'd like to use glass, but we have a concrete floor and 2 levels, and licensing and health and safety don't like that. Secondly, then we had little festival cups, but the design on them was so great that they got stolen within 6 months, and everyone just sent us Instagram pictures, hashtag where they'd taken them on holiday. At the moment, we use something called polycarbonate cups, which are often mistaken for single-use cups, but are not, and our staff pick them up, wash and recycle and reuse them. Where effectively people do pick them up and put them in recycling bins, which are available at the South Quay Shed, they can be mechanically recycled and used and turned into other plastic equivalents of a lower standard. Where we do have people who effectively ask for takeaway options, and that is a smaller number, we use something called a polylactic acid cup or a vegware cup, which does require industrial composting and isn't perfect, but we choose to use effectively because it uses less CO2 to produce and is produced using plant-based sources. So it's the better option that we can offer, similar to what I think we have behind you in the by the drinks machine. That's where we're at.
Thank you, Councillor Cornell. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Harvey?
Well, kind of. It's not actually the case, because when I went there on Tuesday, they were certainly serving in plastic cups, and there wasn't any option. The vegware ones are made in Taiwan. They ship 6,000 miles. The CO2 is quite high on those ones, actually. Really, my supplementary is why not use glass? I know it's got a balcony, but Spoons has got a balcony. Spoons has also got a hard floor. That makes the perfect sense to me.
We don't use glass because effectively licensing and health and safety have recommended that we don't. I would encourage you, if you want to come and look at the cups with me in the back, they might not say vegware on them, and they are frequently mistaken for single use, but they are not. They are specifically designed to be PCP cups because they can deal with being thrown off the top shelf and still reused if they want to. They're pretty pricey, to be honest. And our preference is obviously for people not to take away. We prefer for people to effectively drink on site, and so the majority of what we will give out over the bar will be reused and washed up by our staff.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Watkins to put his first question? Thank you.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, everyone. My question, it appears that the Canaco street cleaning contract is seeing spiralling costs with no clear uplift in service provision in return. As such, costs have almost doubled from 2 million in 2020-21 to £3.7 million in 23-24 without any evidence of improved outcomes. Could the situation be linked to the fact that there is still no clear performance frameworks or contractual KPIs in place between Canterbury City Council and Canenco, despite the previous requests made at Scrutiny Committee? Can the Council please explain this situation? Thank you.
Councillor Charlotte Cornell.
Thank you for your question. So the 2021 budget profile for the company created used historical Serco data. Better and more realistic costs have been generated than those that were given by Serco to provide the service. And as you know, a LATCO, which Canenco is not a conventional provider. It can preempt and respond to circumstance in a much more traditional way than an annually contracted provider, which is held to give rebate or discount generated by KPR data. The increase in costs is also due to two main reasons. One, the unavoidable rise in the increasing inflationary costs, which is linked to fuel and salaries and other international and national pressures. And of course, it's a planned element to fund increased resource, especially for the increased recycling on the coast and the increased amount of coastal cleansing that we wanted to deliver as part of the manifesto commitment, and also delivering on the outcomes of the previous councillor working group. So there have been additional elements put into this contract continuously since 1920 when the company was created. So at the moment, while the formal contract is being finalised, the company is working to a clear annual performance framework, and that is monitored and it is measurable. The framework is reported to the Council's Cabinet Committee. That's very detailed. It provides a clear contractual framework with lots of measurable data. And the company's overall performance is, as you rightly said, overseen by the Council's Scrutiny Committee. So whilst there can be detailed metric in KPI, there are also restrictions on the ability for a company, a LATCO such as ours, to be flexible and respond to circumstance. And that's where we are with that.
Thank you, Councillor Cornell. Did you want a supplementary, Councillor Watkins?
There's not a lot of detail on the cost there, so I might follow up with that separately. But I would just say, in terms of the street cleaning provision itself, which is easier for the public to judge, and noting the prevalence of many flies in the chamber this evening, I'd just like to ask the Cabinet member, do you feel that street cleaning is doing a grand job, both around the Guildhall and across the district more broadly at the moment?
As I leaned over and told one of the colleagues to my right just a minute ago, the reason for the flies is that there's either something delicious in this chamber or something dead. I think Canenco is doing a very good job and has been doing a very good job in some very challenging circumstances. We, as an administration, are bringing forward, hopefully, some changes and improvements to some of our street cleansing service. I'm very impressed by the increased amount of street cleansing we had on the coast this year. We had markedly fewer complaints from the public. It was a very different atmosphere on the coast in terms of the regularity of our bins being emptied, the amount of rubbish found on a Saturday or Sunday morning by members of the public passing. I would like to extend some of those improvements to Canterbury City Centre and hope that over the next couple of years we very much can deliver on that.
Thank you, Councillor Cornell. Councillor Bland, you want to put the question? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This council, in its local code of corporate governance, describes its first core principle as behaving with integrity, demonstrating strong commitment to ethical values and respecting the rule of law. In July 2024, the International Court of Justice found that Israel's continued presence in the occupied Palestinian territory is illegal. It specifically called on Israel to stop settlement activity and end its occupation in the West Bank, East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip as soon as possible. The United Nations Human Rights Council has established a database of settlements businesses. That is a list of all businesses contributing to the development of illegal settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories and occupied Syrian territory. Illegal settler violence in the occupied territories has been widely reported and is a major contributing factor in human rights violations. In line with this Council's code, I asked the Council to report on whether any of the goods or services procured by the Council is from companies or businesses which appear on the United Nations Human Rights Council's database of settlements businesses.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock?
Your Lord Mayor, done a thorough check, and we can confirm that as far as we're aware, none of the companies currently listed by the UN are supplying goods or services to this council. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Did you have a supplementary, Councillor Bland?
Thank you for that, Councillor Baldock. Can I seek a reassurance that all future procurement would prefer the many excellent cost-effective alternatives to any of the businesses on this list in line with our code?
Councillor Baldock?
I will have to answer within the law. And procurement law requires that ethical consideration of company practices is set out as in English law, including those around equalities, discrimination and modern slavery. But procurement law does not allow refusal of a company because of its location or ownership, unless prohibited by government, although new procurement rules favour the UK local companies wholly and foremost. And I think we would be favouring local companies anyway as a council, because that's what we choose to do, just because that's the right thing to do. So from that point of view, we stick with the law, but we will favour local companies in our, and we commit to that in our manifesto, and we commit to that in our corporate plan. In other words, returning pride to our district, we look at that. And of course, in that, we also look to comply with many of the things that are set out in the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, which of course you will agree probably is very much based on a fair world for the most people. So I think that's the best way that I can answer that final follow-up question.
Thank you very much. Can I invite Councillor Franklin to put his first question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. With examples like Reading Council successfully installing green living flora roofs on bus shelters to boost biodiversity, absorb carbon dioxide and improve urban air quality, can the council confirm how many bus shelters in our districts are maintained by the city council versus parish councils, and whether the feasibility of introducing living flora roofs on new or existing bus shelters can be explored as part of our sustainability and biodiversity plans?
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Ricketts to respond?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Behind you, by the way, Robin.
Yeah. I couldn't find you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Franklin, for that question. I can confirm that the council currently owns approximately 80 bus shelters. We don't know how many are owned and operated by parish councils. It will be a large number. I know personally of 4 or 5 in my ward, so that's likely to be similar across the district. In addition, we also have a contract with Clear Channel to provide and maintain approximately 40 bus shelters with advertising panels across the district. And you will be pleased to know that as part of that contract, there is a requirement to provide 2 living roof bus shelters. The trial will begin soon. They are about to submit potential sites for planning, because you do need planning permission for these things. And if that's successful, then we'll look at some other sites where we can roll that out elsewhere. And I know that the open spaces and biodiversity groups have been very interested in this as well. So hopefully that will be the beginning of many more. And if I may ask a supplementary question to Councillor Franklin, given his recent successful charity fundraising shave, has he investigated a living roof for himself, perhaps, to provide? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Do you have a supplementary you want to?
I'm afraid I don't, but all I would say is I would gladly invite Councillor Alex Ricketts to join me in shaving his head for charity, and you know he's always welcome to join in the breeze.
Thank you. We go, Councillor Andrew Harvey to put their question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Keeping the bus theme going, I'm just wondering how the park and ride usage is going for Sturry for the last 3 months. Now it's had time to grow.
Okay, Councillor Ricketts.
Don't worry, Lord Mayor, I have it written down in front of me, so I know the question. And thank you for taking time off your extensive research into the glassware of the pubs of Canterbury to inquire. So I'm pleased to report that usage has steadily increased, and in April the usage was 2,393 vehicles. By December that had reached 5,231 vehicles with a daily high of 364. So I think that demonstrates, that was on Saturday the 14th for those keeping up at home. So I think that demonstrates fantastic improvement and continuing upward trend. There are new park and ride proposals in next year's off-street parking places order, which is out at the moment. And we're also working closely with the bid, as you'll see through that, as I'm sure you've read it closely, to work with businesses to increase park and ride usage with some business passes and some other businesses in the city as well. And there are a few other measures we continue to work to try and improve park and ride and maintain the continuing upward trend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes. Supplementary. Sorry. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for that response, Councillor Ricketts. From my observation, there's still an awful lot of buses running up and down Sturry Road with one person on. Often that's just the driver. Considering we're planning on losing £1 million next year, I just wonder whether it would not be cheaper and cause far fewer emissions to buy 3 top-of-the-range 7-seater Land Rovers, ferry those people about.
Do you want to answer, Councillor Ricketts?
I don't particularly want to answer, but I will if you want, Lord Mayor. 3 Land Rovers you want now. It was 1 last time. Is this inflation?
Usage is growing, Councillor Ricketts.
I think this can only show that you agree that Park and Ride's been so successful that you need 3 Land Rovers instead of 1. So we are constantly speaking to Stagecoach. As you know from previous replies, the contract is there with Stagecoach to run the Park and Rides. They want it to be as successful as we do as well, and they want obviously to reduce emissions as much as possible. So we can do stuff in between and before the next contract renewal. Hopefully we will be able to do that, but we'll certainly be looking at what we can do to make it more efficient when we come into those negotiations, if indeed it is this body that negotiates that contract.
Thank you, Councillor Ricketts. Now we come to item 9, notices of motion. And can I ask the mover to formally move the motion by reading it out in presses? It is very long and complex, and the seconder to second it with no additional statements while doing this. So can I ask Councillor Rachel Carnack as proposer, protecting British family farms and preserving rural communities. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, I don't need to read the motion out as it is, do I? No, sorry, I've misunderstood. Thank you very much. There's anger, dismay and widespread fear about this Labour government's bombshell decision to impose the family farm tax by scrapping agricultural property relief. This relief has been instrumental in allowing British family farms, including tenant farms, to remain intact across generations, supporting food security, sustaining rural communities and aiding environmental stewardship. In our district alone, it's estimated that over 100 family farms will be affected. Here tonight, we have one of our farmers, Martin Twyman. Mr. Twyman is 84 and his farm near Littlebourne grows wheat, barley, apples, potatoes and blackcurrants. and has been passed down through the generations for almost 100 years. His father took the tenancy of a 25-acre small holding in Ickham from Kent County Council just before the Second World War with only £50 and the backing of his uncle. He supplied food that kept people going through the war years and rationing afterwards. He borrowed money, built up his business and employed people. Every penny went back into the farm. His two sons, one of whom is Martin, inherited and followed in his footsteps with a successful family farm supplying food for the country. Yet, as with many family farms, they are asset rich and cash poor. There are similar examples across our district, county and country. These are not vast landowners who shield their wealth in complicated tax avoidance wrappers, which I think was the aim of this change, but unfortunately has been a sledgehammer to crack a nut. These are our farmers who put good food on our plates and feed our families. This change to APR would leave Mr. Twyman's family facing a tax bill of almost £2 million upon his death and facing having to sell up land to stump up these huge amounts of money, choosing whether the business remains viable and they can afford to continue or if they need to leave the land and seek work elsewhere. And before anyone says that only a few farms will be affected annually, the latest evaluations indicate that many more than just 500 estates per year will pay this tax. The much touted figure that 2 people with farmland can pass on up to 3 million without paying inheritance tax doesn't stand up to analysis. We need to face the facts. With the loss of APR, we will be losing much more good agricultural land across the district hand over fist to development as families have to stump up exorbitant amounts of money to keep farming. Our district will be transformed. Our historic landscapes will be lost. Mr. Twyman describes it as a punch below the belt for the next generation. I think he's being quite polite. It's totally devastating for our farmers and our rural communities. As members, we need to take a step back from the politics and look at what is national, or take a step back from the national politics and look at what is more important to our residents and to our district. Over 70% of the district is rural. Farmers are the custodians of the countryside. Not only do they produce food day in, day out, but they protect the environment, are instrumental in leading on flood prevention and support rural services and communities. For the good of our residents, we need to resolve to oppose these changes and advocate for the exemption of family farms. I call on the Cabinet also to meet local farmers and communities to see how we can provide better support for our rural communities. We need to be doing better locally as our corporate plan advocates. I hope members will stand with Canterbury's family farms and support this motion. I represent a rural ward and I also come from a rural background and know firsthand how hard our communities have been hit for many years by many different governments and how many farmers have struggled to survive. But this is the final straw, particularly when farmers were assured in the lead up to the budget that changes to agriculture and business property relief were not on the cards. I very much hope members will stand with Canterbury's family farms and with Mr. Twyman and very many other family farming in this district and support this motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Jones, do you want to speak now or speak at the end of the debate?
Can I speak at the end of the debate?
Yeah.
And I'll second it, by the way, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Yes. Councillor Soul, did you indicate?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As someone who's worked in accountancy practices for over 40 years, and until 10 years ago was involved in a family horticultural business that my great-grandfather started, I'm very, very happy to stand here or sit here and talk about farming and taxation. I could probably talk about it all night, but you'd probably stop me. But it's not surprising, really, that this is the first opportunity I've had to do so at this council because it's completely outside the remit of this authority. The changes in the budget to inheritance tax will adversely affect many family farms, especially those who do not have the time or resources to take appropriate tax mitigation advice or may suffer premature death in the family. And I could talk for hours about that, but we can't as a council do anything about that. I was jumping on tractors long before the opposition started jumping on bandwagons.
Good one.
But I cannot support the first part of this motion just simply because we can't do a thing about it. Now, turning to the second part of the motion, for many years I've regularly met with the Canterbury branch of the National Farmers Union where I discuss all sorts of city and county council matters with local farmers, including Mr Twyman, who I know quite well. Now, I've never seen another councillor at these meetings. At our most recent meeting just a few weeks ago, we discussed changes in taxation, but we also talked about the impact of them, and where local government does have a role, we see what can be done about other items, and I raise those concerns as appropriate. If any local farmer has any issue, they can either attend one of these well-publicised meetings with me, or, of course, contact their ward councillor at any time, like any other business or resident. I can see no benefit in arranging a meeting of Cabinet and farmers, but I'm more than happy to discuss any city council issues with the farming community at any time and pass those concerns on. Now, national governments of all colours will introduce tax changes that adversely affect all kinds of businesses, but we can't sit here and debate all of them. Well, what will the opposition ask for next? Will we be meeting with private schools to discuss increases in VAT? When government legislation impacts what local government does, like Councillor Stockley's question on employers' national insurance, it's right that we ask questions and challenge government, but not when it doesn't. So I'm not going to be supporting this motion, but I thank the opposition for giving me the opportunity to talk about capital tax planning and agricultural property relief and family farms, and I'm happy to continue those conversations with anyone at any time.
Thank you, Councillor Soul. Anybody else? Councillor Bland?
Yes, I'd like to back up what Councillor Soul is saying this, and I oppose this motion as being something which is not actually in the interests of farmers or the wider community. And I'd say that wholeheartedly. And the giveaway is in the line in the so-called food security paragraph, which reads, "The new tax rules could discourage people from buying farmland and renting it out to farmers. Therein lies the rub. We face the extraordinary position of so much farmland being owned not by real farmers, but by investors in the city or otherwise, whose main interest is in inheritance tax avoidance, and increasingly so. These owners have interests other than food security, rural community stability, or environmental stewardship. I'm convinced this Labour government is interested in investing in all these things, and we've seen some of those investments already being announced. And I'd say that these tax changes, or something like it, because there are some alternatives that could be helpful to farmers, and I hope this government does eventually look at those, but that, of course, is beyond the powers of this council to determine. But these tax changes or something like them are necessary to tackle the growing problem of tax avoidance by exploiting land ownership. I'd like to see, if anything, more small farmers and fewer tenants. I'd like to see tenants getting a conversion of their farm into an ownership of their own. And I think that's an important thing we should aim for. Let's deal with real avoidance, tax avoidance schemes on behalf of owners at the expense of the community, including investment in the countryside, while we protect family farms. So I'd say oppose this motion because it doesn't do the job.
Thank you, Councillor Bland. Councillor Watkins?
Thank you. Look, I think there is a kind of real world issue here, which the councillor has just referred to, which is speculative purchases of farmland by people who don't have a history of farming. I'm sure all of us here really care about farming, the impact it has on our district and the impact it has within our county, because we are a world leading region of horticulture. But frankly, when it comes to the legislation that the Labour government has put forward here, it's not being put in to stop speculators. It's being done to raise money. The government could, if it was solely trying to tackle speculators, have simply changed the qualifying rules by which the relief qualified. Something along the lines of you must prove family links to succession of that farmland. But they didn't do that. They slapped the tax on. And yes, it does catch speculators, but very harmfully, it now catches all the farmers, like Mr. Tonks behind us, and many, many more in the district. And I feel that that is a little bit of a smokescreen that's been rolled out after this ill-thought-out tax has been implemented. Look, it is correct what Councillor Sol says about the fact that we're debating national policy, which we can't directly influence. I would remind him, of course, that when he was in opposition alongside the Labour Party a few years ago, they were proposing very many things that we debated, which were national bits of legislation. So to swap agricultural idioms, I would simply say you are now closing the barn door after the horse has gone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Different people are waving. I don't know whether they're waving to get rid of the flies or they're waving to speak. So I think I've got Councillor Mackenzie and then Councillor Prentice and then Councillor Harvey. But I know that people are waving.
Okay. Thank you, Lord Mayor. There are two things that I would say on this. The first is that this tax change is ultimately about fairness. The vast majority of farms will be unaffected, and only a small number of very wealthy farmers and far-right TV celebrities will actually be affected. We cannot turn a blind eye to the wealthy landowners buying agricultural land to avoid paying inheritance tax, like everyone else. This policy means that those with the broadest shoulders are made to pay their fair share, and the loophole used to avoid tax is closed. And do remember that farmers will still be paying 50% less than everyone else paying inheritance tax. Anyone else would be paying 40%. Farmers are paying 20%. Secondly, I would say choices like this have had to be made by our Labour government because the previous Conservative government took a jackhammer to our economy and destroyed our public services. It has fallen to Labour once again to fix the Tories' mess and rebuild our public services that everyone depends on. The money for that has to come from somewhere, and I would rather it comes from wealthy landowners than ordinary working people who have struggled enough due to Tory tax rises, Tory austerity, and a cost of living crisis perpetuated by, you guessed it, the Tories. So while the Conservative councillors follow suit with their party leader and exploit issues for votes, our government is getting on with making the responsible choices to change our country for the better while protecting and elevating ordinary working people.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Prentice?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't accept the arguments put forward in the motion. And whether it is 500 farms or more that are affected, I do believe the tax change is fair, and I'm happy to put that on the record. That we're not necessarily here to make a big case for changes made by national government. We're not in national government, but we are in the position that we are because we do need to raise tax revenues. And I think Councillor Mackenzie has just made the point that we do have to balance the books. This is an argument about fairness, as Councillor Mackenzie pointed out. And looking at the government's own website, it does make it crystal clear what the impact on farmers is. And I cannot pretend to be a tax expert, and I'm not someone who represents a rural community or someone who has lots of farms in his ward. But looking at the information that's provided, I think it's crystal clear what the impact is going to be. Far removed, I think, from some of the misinformation we've seen in the media, which I think has been deeply damaging and I think has been deeply irresponsible as well. I was quite interested actually in Councillor Carnac pointing out about our speaker tonight and where perhaps in the past local authorities owned farms. It's a really interesting point actually, and I think and you know I was aware of that actually being the case, and I'm just wondering why that. I mean, I can probably guess why it's not the case, because farmland is valuable and it is sold on. But there is a point here about ownership of these things and how we own our sources of food production, and particularly under that famously socialist-leaning Kent County Council. So, you know, not being flippant, but my final sort of point would be, yeah, there perhaps is a need to understand better the rural communities in our district, particularly for city dwellers like me. And I'm always up for visiting our rural communities and farmland where farms want to open up and want to say, come and look at what we do, come and look at the value we provide for our local communities and the value we provide to the country, because we can all gain from better understanding of our farms and how they contribute to the wider economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prentice. Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I support this motion and I support our farmers. And I think the main thing about it is it's just a blanket piece of ill thought out legislation that is going to affect so many people. To support our real farmers, it could very easily be changed with a kind of taper relief that I think Councillor Watkins was suggesting. That if you've owned a farm, it's been in your family for 40 years or something, then you should be entitled to that exemption from inheritance tax. And the other thing I feel about it, why it's ill thought out, is if we're going to have exemption, then there should be a clawback for any land. Like I live very near Strode Farm, which was a good working farm, sadly lost now to big housing development. And I think if we're going to have exemptions in there, there should be the possibility to claw back if it's later developed. But overall, with those provisos, I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Baldock?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Obviously, first of all, to sort of unpick a little bit, I'm with Councillor Sol. We discussed this earlier. I'm very much not in favour of debating things like this at council. Certainly, I'm disappointed that we are, because I think it leads people down rabbit holes that we've got some influence that we really haven't. And I think it was somewhat tenuous that we're debating this, but the decision is that we would debate this tonight and be out and open about it, because that's the sort of governance we are open about. We don't hide behind that unnecessarily. So with that in mind, I would just think one thing I believe that Councillor McKenzie raised, it was half the rate that we normal people would pay inheritance and 10 years to pay it off, which is much more than other people have to pay. They often panic and lose everything because they are struggling. So already farmers are being treated as a special case, and implications are there that they are being treated as such. I understand the hard feelings about it, but I just wonder how many times farmers were complaining a few years ago about all the things that hit them then. And, you know, it's Europe, all things like that as well come along. And I understand there's difficulties. I understand there's people feeling passionate about it. And I understand this has been a great thing for Conservative councils up and down the country to pick on this particular issue and go to their local councils. So with that, obviously, we hope that this motion should fail. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charlotte Cornell?
Thank you. I'll mirror some of what Alan Baldock, Councillor Baldock just said there. I think this motion is out of the scope of the business of the council. And whilst I appreciate that there's perhaps been a history of such, as you say, I don't enjoy it when the Canterbury City Council debating chamber becomes like an LBC phone-in, and we're not dealing with the business that we've been elected to actually do. Horse may have bolted, but you conceded yourself that this was not a motion that had anything to do with council business. And there's absolutely no point barnstorming around an empty stable. Now, I wasn't a councillor when in the previous administration, so what may or may not have happened then. But I don't think there's anything wrong with doing things better now. So motions that are out of scope, this one, others, ones that come in future, motions to do with stuff that is not Canterbury City Council business, I won't be supporting any of them. So I'll save my comments. They're on record for the next 3 years. And perhaps people could save time by bringing motions that are more pertinent, stuff we can actually action.
Councillor Buckman?
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Excuse me. Yeah, just to start with, I think it is Councillor Prentice was saying about misinformation, and you know there is so much about misinformation about now, which is sort of feeding people's fears. And I think we heard today that sort of fact checking on social media platforms is now going to be a thing of the past. I would like, if we're talking more local-wise with farmers and supporting communities, and we have held these, is it Eat Kent food festivals, and how we buy our own food. I mean, that is going to help on a very local level if we go to the producers and the farmers. I do understand actually the government is planning to undertake another review of the, I think it's called the Groceries Code Adjudicator, which helps challenge for fairer pricing from food and their suppliers, and that will work out how it relates to supermarkets and what they're paid for the actual costs. And also, I will go touch on a couple of the national things. You know, apparently there has been 5 billion announced to help farmers produce food over the next 2 years, which is the largest amount ever allocated for sustainable food production. And alongside this, there's been £60 million set aside for the Farming Recovery Fund, which helps farmers recover from the impact of flooding. And my last bit on national figures is the government will also invest £208 million in the protection against outbreaks of serious diseases that threaten our farming industry, food security and human health. However, I would still go back to my original point of if we can make small steps by promoting farmers locally and buying locally. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckman. Councillor Franklin?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I find it extraordinary how the Conservatives on the road to Damascus now see the light of the struggles of our farmers. After all, under the previous Conservative government, farming subsidies had fallen by 20% in real terms since 2015. 2023 alone saw 8,100 UK farms closed, equal to 1 farm to 25 farms in the country. Nationally, the Lib Dems have called to scrap the family farm tax. However, the Tories knew about this and did nothing but neglected them. I agree with Councillor Mike Saul. Any issue that farmers locally are struggling from, that Canterbury City Council can resolve, please reach out. But where it is a national debate, we can't do much on it. And so I will not be voting for this bandwagon motion when just last year we saw tractors outside of Downing Street in London protesting Rishi Sunak and the Conservative government. So it's all high and mighty from the Conservatives opposite, but realistically they have done nothing but neglected them.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin. Councillor Nolan?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think it is perfectly possible to be in sympathy with the farmers, but not support this motion. As other people have said, it's without our remit. I have got to know quite a bit about farming, quite strangely, over the last few years. I knew about the swine flu that happened. Thank goodness the bio protection worked well. Not so well with the foot and mouth. I, like other people, experienced throughout this country and also in France, where we had a small holding, the situation where you went through troughs of disinfectant, where people who hadn't gone through the biosecurity weren't allowed on. I listened to farming today in the morning and farming this week to keep up with things. I know one of the big problems at the moment is that farmers who are in chicken production and other birds have to keep them under cover because of bird flu. So I know how resilient farmers are and have to be because of the natural problems and how they employ biodiversity and also defence against that, biosecurity. So when I listened to Councillor Saul talking about tax benefits, I thought, well, that's another point of resilience that farmers have. I'm sure they have. Also, I know that some farms devolve into family trusts and so forth. So I think it's entirely possible to have sympathy for our farming community. We are, after all, what is known as the Garden of Kent. But I've also seen, as I'm sure other councillors have, how the farms, particularly around Chartham, have changed their crops because of climate change. And therefore, that's another example of how the farming community is increasingly and always resilient and adapting to change. So obviously, I'm not going to support the motion, but I can express my sympathy and my support for the farming community around the Canterbury district.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. I can't see anybody else that's indicated. So, Councillor Jones, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for the debate. I have a little bit, tiny small bit of knowledge about farming, and so does my chamber colleague, Councillor Harvey. We run a very, very small business rearing pigs, so we know how hard farmers work. Anyway, I'm going to make a big speech. I think don't panic. This is not just to swap flies. All I wanted to say, these few lines are not from me. They are from the NFU president, Tom Bradshaw, and it reads, his words, not mine, to cap a wretched year, we saw a Labour government which, after 14 years in opposition, promised to reset its relations with British farmers and deliver a much-needed lift to farmer confidence. Instead, it delivered an inflationary budget and all but removed the tax reliefs for agricultural property and business property. In all my years in the industry, I have never experienced the anger, despair and sense of betrayal following the Chancellor's announcement to changes in inheritance tax, which has long protected farming's ability to pass on the farm businesses to the next generation, thereby protecting food, producing businesses and our nation's food security. And that was the NFU President, Tom Bradshaw, and I couldn't really add anything else to that. So thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Andrea, we need to read out the council revolves to you. Will, yeah, please. Then we'll know what we're voting on.
Okay. So the resolution is this council resolves to oppose changes to inheritance tax affecting family farms and advocates for the exemption of family farms to preserve the UK's food security, rural communities and environmental initiatives. The council also resolves to ask Cabinet to consider a meeting with local farmers and communities to consider ways it can provide better support to our rural communities. So a vote for is a vote in support of that. Okay?
Everybody okay?
Yep.
Please vote now.
So that has fallen with 8 in favour, 21 against and 6 abstaining.
Thank you very much for that debate. We now go on to the next motion. And I invite Councillor Alex Ricketts to propose and Councillor James Flanagan to second.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Everybody's waving at me.
Sorry, Lord.
Thank you. I won't read the motion out, but for those of you who are unaware of the issue that we're discussing, it is a national policy issue. However, council procedure rules, scope of motions. Motions must be about matters of which the authority has a responsibility or which affect the district of Canterbury City Council and that the council can influence in some way. A motion must also include a clear statement of concerns and action requested. I shall endeavour to fulfil that requirement with this motion. I would like Canterbury City Council to write to the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government to demand the compensation formula for parish councils, town and parish councils, is changed so that they receive the same compensation as principal councils for financial losses due to the forthcoming national insurance changes. So I would like us to resolve to write to the Minister for Housing. I believe that we could exert some influence. I think that this serves two purposes, not just to exert some influence on the Minister for Housing, but also to demonstrate to our parish councils that we support them and that we're aware of the trouble that they're going through and that we're trying to help them through that. Parish councils perform a vital role in our district and in our society. And for those councillors unlucky enough not to represent a parished area, it might not always be obvious what they do. And even for those who do, it can sometimes not be particularly obvious. Today I was walking on Neil's Place Meadow, which is land owned by the City Council, I believe, but maintained by Rough Common and Harbour Down Parish Council. A huge amount of work goes into just this one area of land, and a lot of it for free by Councillor Simon Doherty, whose incredible knowledge and skill goes to maintaining a lot of the trees there, and work that prevents flooding, indeed flooding of an unparished area that neighbours that parish as well. Without the parish council doing that vital work, a huge cost burden would fall on this city council, and it wouldn't happen as quickly, quite simply. That's the story across this district, across Kent, and across the rest of the UK. Most effective parish councils employ a clerk. And for those not aware of parish clerks, if you can cast your mind back to Jackie Weaver in lockdown, they're that kind of person, the people who keep the country running in vast parts of the nation. Some parishes share clerks, some clerks are part-time, some are full-time. But with the changes in national insurance, most parishes will meet the £5,000 threshold for having to pay employers national insurance. This is estimated by the National Association of Local Councils to put a £10 million burden on parish councils at least. They often run on tight budgets, and I'm slightly concerned that there have been some noises saying, well, this needs to be passed on to residents through the precept. Surely the idea of increasing employers' national insurance contributions is to increase the amount business contributes to our national coffers, not to increase direct taxation on those in parish and town council areas. You'll be glad to know I returned from my walk to watch the live stream of the KCC meeting today because I live a rich and varied life. The vote was then taken, and as we've heard earlier on, that we'll be proceeding towards a unitary. This makes it even more important that parish councils are supported and that this chamber demonstrates its support for parish councils. And there's another factor within that unitary authorities will increase the gap between residents and their councils. It steps it up a level. Parish councils will be filling that democratic void and that representational void. And it also means that the areas that they'll have to be more involved in, they already do amazing work in planning. This means that clerks will become more important to make sure that those bodies are professional, they're well informed, they're well looked after. Reducing the ability of parish councils to employ properly qualified and educated clerks is going to harm our democracy as we go forward. The legislation that was being discussed mentions parish councils 3 times. One, it threatens to rewire the relationship between town and parish councils and principal local authorities, which is worrying. And finally, it says that the government will fundamentally reset the relationship between local and central government, creating a new partnership based on
Alex,
trust.
I think
Two seconds.
Go on then.
So I ask the council to help the government in its mission to raise our voice and see if it will indeed be heard at the top level. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Flanagan, you're seconding.
I'm Lord Mayor and I'll speak now if I may.
Speak now. Okay.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A minute, right, here we go. Councillor Ricketts makes a fundamental point in his words, not just that he lives a rich and varied life, as we all know he does from time to time, but that parish councils often run on tight budgets and costs are often expected to be passed on through the precept. Many smaller parish councils have part-time clerks earning below the previous £9,000 threshold for national insurance purposes. By lowering the threshold to £5,000, parish councils now need to pay on the portion above that new threshold. Let's take an example. A small parish council employing a part-time clerk on, say, £10,000 a year. That council will have previously paid just over £100 for their national insurance contribution. Now, by lowering the threshold and increasing the rate to 15%, that contribution will now be 7 times greater. Now, that may not sound a lot in pounds and pence, but by the time you add that on, you're already beginning to increase the parish council precept before adding on anything else. Now, the Department for Housing, Communities and Local Government has already acknowledged the impact that this will have on parish and town councils through its own replies to the National Association of Local Councils just before Christmas. In its reply, it said, and I quote, "We recognise that this will require town and parish councils to make some difficult financial decisions, and in particular that many may need to raise the precept and that some may need to make staffing cuts in order to meet these new costs. We understand neither of these decisions will be taken lightly by your members." End of quote. Now, clearly, we don't want to see precepts raised beyond what is necessary. We don't want to see staffing cuts made in order to meet these new costs. So therefore, let us at the very least write to the department, as other councils have already done, to ask that the compensation formula is changed so that parish and town councils receive the same compensation as principal councils do through the national insurance change. Because by doing so, we will also be standing up for parish councils across our district who, like the one in my own ward, add so much to their communities and the areas that they represent. And by writing to the department, we will be supporting the 40,000 residents who live in our parishes as we meet the very first requirement of our own parish charter, to work together to promote local environmental, social and economic well-being. I hope that members will support this motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Flanagan. Councillor Saul?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I get to talk about national insurance and capital taxes. What a lovely evening.
You're a happy man.
When government announced this change, they protected small businesses from this increase by increasing the employer's allowance, which meant pretty much if you've got about sort of 5 employees on average wages, it made no difference. Only those with more employees had an extra charge to pay. But parish councils have never been able to claim that allowance. And now we get the double blow that with the increase, the government's saying it's going to protect district councils, county councils from the increase, but give nothing to parish councils. It just feels like, you know, an anomaly. Something went wrong here. Did they not think, did no one in government think that parish councils exist or look at what they do? Is this not one of the tiers of government that they're interested in? Well, we all know that parish councils are a lifeblood of our communities. They do so much with so little. And these changes in national insurance will have a significant impact on their ability to deliver services, especially next year, because next year they will be working on budgets that were set before this increase was announced. So parish councils sitting down, looking at what they're going to spend their money on next year, will either have to, if they're lucky enough to have some reserves, come out, spend money from reserves, but otherwise they will have to cut back on expenditure and vital projects in our communities will go because of this. So all we're asking tonight is that council writes to government, sets out our concerns, is the voice of the parish councils in this district, and to see if we can do something to make this a more equitable situation for those who do so much in our villages and other areas.
Thank you, Councillor Saul. Councillor Duke?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to say that I'm obviously going to support this motion. I work with 3 parish councils, as does my colleague Councillor Ricketts there. Same parish councils. We all know who we're dealing with. And these are people who are mostly volunteers. The clerk gets paid, yes, but regardless of whether this is a national issue, I think we should show whatever support we can. They're volunteers who give up their time to look after us. They look after the minutiae of our lives. They look after our benches, the gutter snipes who are, you know, messing up the fields with their, what are they called? Little 4x4 things. Dirt bikes. They're there looking out every day to make sure that our lives are nicer, and they're doing it for free. So whatever support we can give them, we need to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Listen to the debate. It's an interesting concept, and I'm broadly sympathetic to dealing with this anomaly, but would also point out that it's actually out of scope, in my opinion, as well. But again, you know, Councillor Ricketts tried to steer around it, and we've all done things like that before, but I'm sure we will do things like that again. But with Councillor Ricketts and Councillor Flanagan's, I'd like to propose an amendment, actually, before we go any further in the debate. An amendment is such. It just softens some of the wording that I think is a little bit aggressive. And I think it might have been copied out of maybe the Lib Dem playbook somewhere. It just reads like a Lib Dem playbook. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of get I actually get the feeling what comes out the Conservative playbook and the Lib Dem and the Green one. I've never quite got a playbook. So anyway, the motion, I would suggest the wording as such. So this council resolves to write to the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government and Devolution, highlighting the anomaly in currently proposed legislation and seeking to change so there is parity of the compensation formula for town and parish councils, or something very, very close to that. So by doing that, we're just deleting the words after the government to demand, I'm repeating demand and then also after formula is changed. So there's one sentence really effectively being inverted or inserted rather. Yep. Thank you. I need a seconder for that, please.
No, yes, Councillor Hazelton.
I'd like to second that, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Do you have the word in complete? Oh. Andrew's got it. So we are now speaking on the amendment, and Councillor Ricketts, do you...
Just for clarification, could you read the wording as you've got it? Not that I don't trust Councillor Hazelton not to have inserted words on the way up, but...
Shall I read the whole thing out for you with the proposed amendment? So this council resolves to write to the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government, highlighting an anomaly in current proposed legislation and seeking a change so that parity in the compensation formula, so town and parish councils receive the same compensation at principal councils for financial losses due to the forthcoming national insurance changes.
Lord Mayor, just to, sorry, being a bit of a pedant, I think perhaps I should say to ensure that parish and town councils receive the same compensation, etc. If that's okay. That was in no playbook, no.
in current proposed.
Sorry.
So, yeah, that's how fun.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Change.
So we've all listened to the amendment. Councillor Ricketts,
I'm happy on the basis that Councillor Baldock will cool my jets slightly, and since we're seeking to influence the minister, and he's probably better placed to work out how to influence the minister, that kinder words are likely to gain more influence. So I'm happy to adopt that.
okay. Does anybody want to speak on the amendment?
That's never substantive.
Yeah, the motion becomes substantive motion. Hello, Councillor Smith.
It may be worth mentioning in that amendment that the government's view was that parish councils were recognised as an important layer given the upcoming changes, so it would support that view just if they were to act on that.
Councillor Baldock?
Yeah, I mean, my view is that this is an anomaly, and I will highlight that as well in there. Whether they believe me or not is completely and utterly up for the lap of the gods. But in essence, as I spoke earlier on in the bit about the devolution, the effectiveness of town and parish councils becomes even more important, and I shall be highlighting that point as well. Thank you.
Councillor Carnac, are you speaking on the substantive motion?
I am speaking on the substantive, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to say that, to me, this smacks yet again of an attack on our small communities and our rural communities, and it is out of scope, and it fits with the earlier one that you can also say, my motion, you can say both are out of scope, but actually they're not out of scope. Neither of them are out of scope, because we should be looking after our rural communities, and we should be doing everything we can to ask government, whatever colour that government is, to do more to support our rural communities. They are being badly let down. Parish councils being overlooked in this way, it's not a new thing. District councils have overlooked and county councils have overlooked parish councils for donkey's years. We've all overlooked parish councils. It's only really those councillors in this council who have parish councils who've battled relentlessly to support them, and with things like concurrent function funding, all sorts of things, full parishing. And Mr. Twyman, who's sitting in the gallery, he is also a parish councillor. And a lot of our farmers make up our parish councils. We really need to not think these are national policies that we can have no influence over. As local councillors, as rural councillors, we should be totally involved in our communities. I know some of us are very much so, and we should be supporting, whether that's farmers to be able to continue farming, to support our rural communities, whether that's parish councils to support our rural communities. And one of the really important things that hasn't been mentioned, I touched on, but hasn't been mentioned, is actually the role that parish councils and our farmers play in flood prevention in this district. I think for many councillors, it's probably a little bit of a sort of I don't know. An unusual subject area because everyone's aware of flooding. But I know Councillor Sol was on the Internal Drainage Board, and I am now on the Internal Drainage Board. And when you look at that and the role that our farmers and our parish councils actually play across our district in supporting all our residents in something like flooding, in preventing flooding, in taking measures to protect somewhere like Canterbury, then I think that these actually aren't issues of national, that are just national issues or out of scope. These are issues that affect each and every one of us in representing our communities. So I support this motion. I welcome it because I think anything that keeps saying to politicians, national politicians, that they need to be doing more for their rural communities is absolutely vital. And we are best placed as local councillors to do that. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins?
Thank you. Yeah, and like everyone else, I see the case being made here and agree Parish is doing great work. And I'm really pleased, actually, to see that looks like we are going to vote in support of raising this to the Minister and asking for parishes to be protected. However, I mean, the leader has described this as an anomaly from the employer's national insurance hike, but I don't believe it's an anomaly, because I would bring some other very worthy local examples to your attention now, the remainder of my time, to show that other people who are also very worthy, just like parishes, are really losing out from this tax, and they deserve some airtime, even if they are not part of this motion. So we've already talked tonight about local authority trading companies like Kanenko, but there are many more across Kent and the country, and they are all having to pay this extra tax, and that tax will be found by one source, and that is hard-up taxpayers, both here in Canterbury and more broadly. You also have charities. The independent sector has to pay this huge increase in national insurance, particularly those who employ a lot of part-time workers, as many of them do. And all of those, you know, there was one, you will have seen it in the local newspaper very recently, Mencap in Canterbury, providing care for people with learning disabilities. They are going to have to pay this extra tax. They're not an anomaly. And finally, even when you come to look at business have to pay this tax. That was probably the original target of the government when they started thinking about how much money they could extract from employers. But even businesses, you've heard on the radio, I'm sure, businesses trading here in the city of Canterbury who provide clothing, who provide groceries, they said, we are going to put up our prices in the spring when we are hit by this tax, which came out of the blue, frankly. So I just want to point out that there are many, many anomalies. Great that we're talking about supporting parishes. That's what's on the paper, and I'm really pleased that we are going to be supporting them. But we should also remember that many other organisations are missing out from this tax, and I hope in due course we can do all we can as a district to help them in the future. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Castle.
Sorry, thank you, Lord Mayor. Apologies, I had a very early start this morning. I'm going to play rural ward top trumps. I've got 5 parish councils, and I'm going to double trump it by saying I want a parish council myself, and so I fully support this proposal. I've spoken to all the parish councils, and they're very concerned about it. And I think the key thing is the influence, the scope of influence. We directly are engaged with the parish councils. Martin Twyman, I know he's on the parish council. We speak regularly. They are businesses we spoke about in the last motion. This is different. These are voluntary organisations with an employee that runs everything for local residents. And I agree with all the positive stuff about the national policy, about charities, and we're not negating that. But this motion is specifically for something if we can push from this chamber, and every single council in the country did the same, maybe there would be a change. Unfortunately, the Farmers Edition, which Councillor Soul put very detailed, is a private taxation matter. And we will have very little influence on that ever moving forward. So I just want to make a point of the 2 distinctions between the motions tonight and how I read them and interpreted them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Castle. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So if I could pay a little bit of historical top trumps, I used to be a parish councillor, and I also used to live in a very rural area, and my partner lives in the most rural bit that you can possibly get in East Kent. Doesn't have any Wi-Fi, doesn't have mains drainage, doesn't have gas. We know what it's like to survive out in the rural communities. And I do know that the farmers are often the backbone of parishes, parish councils, and that quite often when the parish is looking for hedgerows to be cut back, it's the local farmer who says, oh, I'll go swing by on Saturday morning and I'll, cut that back for you. And that is, just as Councillor Duke was saying, those are the small everyday things that our parish councils do, particularly in our rural communities. So I do have, you know, long-standing kind of roots, and I didn't want to really join in this about making it political. But Councillor Watkins, you talk about, you know, anomalies, and it's not an anomaly. £22 billion black hole has to be filled somehow. The hollowing out of our public services, which includes local councils at all levels, upper tier that you represent, this second tier that we represent, parish councils, has been hollowed out over 14 years of historical Conservative governments. And that's what the taxation is looking to fill and to build back better. And so I wouldn't have made a political point, but you brought it up first, so top trumps on parish councils, and I want to put the political debate back in its box because it's you Tories that have caused this situation in the first place.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Lord Mayor. So, I don't think I've won the game of who's got the most, but Councillor Moses and I work with 3 parish councils and 1 town council across our ward. And we are very fortunate to be able to work closely with each of them on matters that are of importance to our residents and seeing firsthand some of the vital and committed work that they do for their communities. I wouldn't want to see the parish councils and town council in our ward to be hindered in any way. So I do welcome constructively engaging with the Minister to seek out whether this parity in the compensation formula can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
In the interests of Fordwich, perhaps we should include town councils in the statement.
I can't see anybody else, so we are going to vote on the substantive motion amended on the amendment. Wouldn't you read it out?
Councillor Vickers accepted the amendment.
I was happy to accept the amendment without.
Yeah. Oh, I was right. I was right. Substantive motion, and please read it out, Andrea.
Right, I shall read you out the amended motion, as Councillor Ricketts has accepted it. This council resolves to write to the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government, highlighting an anomaly in current proposed legislation and seeking a change to ensure parity in the compensation formula so that town and parish councils receive the same compensation as principal councils for financial losses due to the forthcoming national insurance changes. So a vote for is a vote in favour of that resolution. Okay?
Everybody clear?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's Naomi. Naomi, have you voted? Oh, is that what? Did you mean no? I'm not sure she meant no.
Not too late. Okay.
Oh, okay. No blame. No, it's fine.
Close it.
Okay. So that is carried with 32 in favour and 3 abstaining.
Thank you very much, and very interesting debate. Bar, it, as we said, it is national, but it affects us in some ways. So, Connie, did you wish to say something?
Can I raise a point of order, Lord Mayor? Why are there so many... Oh.
We don't know why there's some flies. I think they're
quite aggressive.
I can tell you what Andrea said, that they've been putting rat poison out in the graveyard and in the vicinity, and unfortunately the flies have found the rats, and that's why we've got flies here. That's what I was told, but yes. So I'm sorry, but that's what it is. It's not nice, but
But no point of order.
no, it's not really a point of order.
Councillor Stockley.
Councillor Stockley?
If it's not a point of order, I apologise, but can we remedy the situation by getting someone in to remove the flies? Thank you.
I've been told by Peter we are. It's something that's happened and I'm sorry, but as soon as we get finished, the sooner we can leave and then we can be fly free. Thank you. So we're on to item 10, changes to membership of committees and subcommittees for the remainder of the council year. And can I invite Councillor Baldock, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So the list is on page 27 of the agenda. That's the one like that. And in essence, I think I'm right in saying this. Actually, you've offered other councillors to replace Joe Howe. So I actually haven't done that for Councillor Carr Ellis yet. So this should be for that replacement, and I would urge you to support those changes if you wouldn't mind, please.
Okay, have we got a seconder, Councillor Sol?
Secondly, but I'm slightly confused about. I think.
It's to change these services.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. From Councillor Dickey.
27 and the supplements.
It's page 27 and also listed in the supplement to the agenda.
Beg your pardon. Can you have you got that up there, Mike, and then
Yeah, it's just a change on the East Kent Services Joint Committee to remove Councillor Dixie and to add Councillor Sol.
and that I think is actually what we should be voting on, the whole of that together. So that's really good. Thank you for that. Sorry about that.
Is that clear now? Thank you. Page 27 on the agenda.
And the supplement.
Second, we've got one more change. It might
So this is the agenda supplement.
Sorry to confuse the meeting, Chair. Lord Mayor.
Yeah. So
Mellish.
we've not published
Councillor
the.
Mellish, did you want to?
Yeah, we had one amendment in yesterday,
Clarify.
and it possibly might be useful to do that. I've not got it in front of me. Have you got it in front of you, Tom?
I haven't, but our amendment was to have Councillor Buckman become chair of cabinet companies, and that Councillor Mackenzie would become chair of standards.
I'm happy to take that if everyone's happy with that amendment. Yeah, that would be useful rather than do it next time, which would be helpful. Yeah.
So Councillor Buckman would be replacing Councillor Carr Ellis.
Yeah, that's really. And there will be other changes. So I think we just need to do that. You've heard the last one there. The one that Councillor Sol proposed as well there for Councillor Dixie, and all of those. If you want me to read them out, I will. But I think they are really being published on the page 27. So that is how I propose. Do you want me to read those out? No, that's fine. That's fine. So it's just they've been seconded. So we vote on taking those changes, if you can, please.
Everybody clear?
Yeah. General assent.
General assent? Yeah.
Certainly didn't make that clear. You know, I apologise for that. So it's
Thank you. I think that was unanimous. So council minutes, I invite Councillor Baldock to propose. Is he there? Councillor Baldock,
Sorry,
you're just getting sorted.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's yeah, I just wanted to find it in the agenda, but we need to approve the minutes of the last council meeting. So 24th of October. I'm sorry, that's what I was looking for that. So thank you for that. So I need a seconder for that, please.
Seconded.
General assent? Thank you very much. So just to report that there are no update reports on previous motions for this meeting. And then we go on to 13 and Peter would like to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to confirm to councillors that the minutes will be dealt with in turn. The Lord Mayor will invite the relevant chair to propose receipt and adoption of the minutes and then ask for a seconder for the proposal. Councillors reminded they are permitted to debate the minutes if they wish, but they cannot be amended. The only possible action, if there is any disagreement on the accuracy of the minutes, is for them to be sent back to the relevant committee. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Peter. So the first one is Councillor Baldock on Cabinet.
I submit for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Cabinet on the 4th of November 2024, pages 43 to 49, and the Cabinet on the 9th of December 2024 on pages 50 to 54. Thank you.
Have we got a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you. Can we have general assent? Thank you. Cabinet Committee companies and Councillor Jupe.
I submit for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Cabinet Committee companies on 28th November 2024 on pages 55 to 57.
And we've got a seconder.
Happy to second, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. General assent? Yeah. Licensing Subcommittee, Councillor Bland? Oh. No, I haven't got governance, no. Yeah. Yep. Well, I'll go through as I've listed, and then I will come back to the governance at the end as my notes. So, Licensing Subcommittee, Councillor Bland.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I move for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Licensing Subcommittee on Wednesday, the 8th of November 2023, pages 58 to 62. Again on Wednesday, 22nd of November 2023, pages 63 to 68. Again, Wednesday, 20th of December 2023, page 69. On Wednesday, the 16th of October 2024, page 70. And finally, on...
Two more.
So,
Two more.
sorry, where did I get to?
Penultimate.
Right. And also on Wednesday, 23rd of October 2024. And finally, on Tuesday, the 12th of November 2024, pages 77 to 79. Do
And
I
have we got a seconder?
I'm a seconder, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
General assent? Thank you. Overview Committee, Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I move for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Overview Committee held on Thursday, the 10th of October 2024, pages 80 to 83. Do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. And I note the Overview Committee, the 7th of November 2024 was cancelled, and the Planning Committee, 15th of October 2024 was cancelled. So can I ask Councillor Edwards, please, for the...
So was that? Thank you, Lord Mayor. I move for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Planning Committee Tuesday, the 12th of November, pages 84 to 87, and Planning Committee Tuesday, the 10th of December, 2024, pages 88 to 90. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Did we vote? Oh, did I jump ahead on overview? I think I was informed by my colleague that I've didn't do general assent. So can we do general assent on the overview committee? Thank you. I'm trying to get as quickly as possible, but making mistakes. And then on planning, we had a seconder. Yeah. And general assent. Thank you very much. Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Carnac.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I submit for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee on 27th November 2024, pages 91 to 95. To have a seconder, please.
Thank you. General assent. And then the Whitstable Harbour Board, Councillor Chris Cornell.
I move for receipt and adoption of the minutes of Whitstable Harbour Board, Friday the 11th of October, pages 96 to 100. Can I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Dixie, you've seconded? Yeah. So, general assent? Thank you very much. And additionally, to state that the minutes of the meeting of the Governance Committee, 18th of December 2024, have been published in the agenda supplement. And can I invite Councillor Baldock to propose these minutes?
Mayor, I submit for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Governance Committee held on the 18th of December, and
we have a
they
seconder?
are published in the agenda, so or the agenda supplement. So seek a seconder, please.
Seconder?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dupe. General assent. Item 14, just to confirm, there are no notices of urgent decisions made, and the joint chief executives or directors to report.
No, Lord Mayor.
No. And I have no other urgent business to be dealt with tonight. So thank you very much. And good night. And hopefully you're waving at me, not waving at the flies.